So let's shift gears a little bit. Let's dive into those tools for actually breaking the cycle. Like, where does the book even suggest we begin?
Well, it all starts with this fundamental recognition, right? That the effects of abuse, the effects of neglect, they're not your fault. And that's such a huge thing to really take in. Because I think a lot of people who've experienced abuse, they feel so much shame, so much self-blame.
Right.
And that can keep us really stuck in this cycle of guilt and self-sabotage. So that's where self-compassion comes in. It's not about condoning, harmful behaviors, but it's about understanding where those behaviors come from and then offering yourself grace and understanding as you work towards healing.
That's such an important point. And I think a lot of people struggle with that, right? Like that inner critic, that voice that says, well, I should be over this by now, or, it's my fault for reacting this way.
Yeah.
But the book really emphasizes that shame just keeps us trapped in the past.
Exactly. Instead of getting so bogged down in shame, the book suggests that we focus on understanding
Okay.
because the more we learn about the impact of trauma, the more empowered we become to actually make different choices.
Yeah.
It's like shining a light on those shadowy parts of ourselves, bringing them into conscious awareness so we can start to dismantle them.
It sounds like education is a really key part of this process.
It absolutely is. And that education, it's not just about, reading books or listening to podcasts like this one.
All right.
It can also involve seeking therapy, joining support groups, connecting with other people who get it, who understand what you're going through. It's about finding those resources and communities that can really support you on your journey.
Yeah, that's so important.
Hmm.
We don't have to do this alone. There are people out there who get it, who've
Yeah.
been there, who can offer support and guidance.
Yeah.
So what are some of the other tools or strategies that the book highlights for breaking free from these patterns?
Well, they talk a lot about the importance of developing healthy coping mechanisms and learning to regulate our emotions. Remember, we defined emotional regulation earlier?
Yeah.
This is where that comes in. It's about learning to identify your triggers, those things that tend to just send you into a tailspin emotionally, and then developing strategies for managing those feelings in a healthy way.
So instead of reacting impulsively, maybe lashing out or shutting down completely,
Right.
we can take a pause, take a breath, and actually choose a different response.
Exactly. And those responses, they're going to look different for different people, right?
Right.
So it could involve things like, practicing mindfulness, journaling, engaging in physical activity, developing a more supportive self-talk script.
Yeah.
It's about finding what works for you and building that toolbox of coping skills.
The book also talks about setting boundaries,
Right. Yep.
especially when it comes to those toxic family dynamics that might be perpetuating these cycles.
Absolutely. Sometimes breaking the cycle means creating some distance from those who are causing us harm,
Yeah.
even if those people are our family members. And, that can be really tough. It might mean limiting contact, setting really firm boundaries, maybe even choosing to disengage entirely if that's what's necessary for your well-being.
Yeah. That's a tough one, especially in cultures that really emphasize, family ties and loyalty.
It can be really challenging, but I think it's important to remember that sometimes self-preservation requires us to make difficult choices.
Mm.
And creating that distance, setting those boundaries, it's not about, being selfish or rejecting our loved ones. It's about protecting ourselves, about
Yeah.
creating that safe space for healing.
And healing is a process, right? It's not like you just arrive at this destination overnight.
You got it. It's not about, erasing the past, pretending it didn't happen. It's about integrating those experiences into your narrative in a way that allows you to move forward with strength and with wisdom.
Yeah.
It's about learning to hold both the pain and the resilience, the darkness and the light.
I love that. It's like recognizing that we're complex beings
Mm.
and we have this whole tapestry of experiences that have shaped us into who we are today.
Mm-hmm.
And while some of those experiences might include some pretty painful chapters,
Right.
they don't define us. We can choose how those stories inform our present and how we want to write the next chapter of our lives.
And that's such a powerful message. It's not about being defined by our past, but it's about using those experiences to inform our present and create this more empowered future. It's about
Oh.
breaking free from those limiting narratives and writing a new story, one that's filled with hope, resilience, and healthy connections.
I really like that metaphor of rewriting the story. Yeah. It feels very hopeful and empowering. It reminds me of something else that the book touched on, this idea of conscious parenting.
Mm-hmm.
If we're working to break these cycles for ourselves,
Right.
it's also about preventing them from being passed down to the next generation.
Absolutely. Conscious parenting, it's all about being mindful of our own triggers, our own reactions,
Yeah.
so we don't inadvertently pass on those same harmful patterns to our kids. It's about creating this nurturing and supportive environment where
Yeah.
children feel safe to express their emotions, their needs, their boundaries,
Right.
without fear of judgment or reprisal.
It sounds like it's about modeling healthy communication, emotional regulation, and conflict resolution.
Hmm.
Basically, showing our kids what healthy relationships look like.
Exactly. It's about giving them the gift of a childhood free from the pain and the trauma that might have shaped our own.
Yeah.
It's about breaking those chains and setting them free to write their own stories unburdened by the weight of the past.
It's one thing to, talk about breaking the cycle,
Uh,
but it's another thing entirely to actually do it.
yeah.
What are some of those concrete steps? Like, where do we start? What can people actually do to start making those changes?
Well, the book, it really emphasizes this idea of empowerment, which is so important because I think a
Mm.
lot of people who've been through abuse, neglect, they feel powerless.
Right.
Like they're just victims of their circumstances. But we all have the power to change, to heal, to create a different future for ourselves. And one of the most powerful ways to tap into that power is through knowledge and understanding.
I love that. It's like that aha moment, right? When you suddenly see those strings that have been making you dance a certain way.
Exactly.
Okay, Nick, I get it. Now I can start to untangle these knots and figure out how to move differently.
And once you have that understanding, you can start taking those concrete steps to actually change those patterns. And the book offers this whole toolbox of strategies, things like journaling, mindfulness practices, working on your self-talk, learning how to set boundaries, and creating a support network of people who truly get it.
I love how the book emphasizes that support piece. Like it explicitly says that the effects of abuse and neglect are not your fault. And that shame just gets in the way of progress.
Hmm.
I think that's so important to emphasize because I think a lot of us struggle with that inner critic
Absolutely.
that says, I should be over this, or,
Yeah.
I'm not good enough, or whatever that voice is saying.
Yeah, like they anticipated our inner critic and shut it down.
Yeah.
And that validation, that reminder that, hey, you're not alone in this, it can be so powerful, so healing. It gives you permission to be gentle with yourself, to recognize that healing takes time and there's no shame in seeking support.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that support can come from a lot of different places. It doesn't have to be formal therapy. It can be a friend, a family member, a support group, even, find people online who've had similar experiences
Exactly.
and connecting with them.
Yeah. And the book also talks about the importance of self-care. Taking care of your physical, emotional, spiritual needs, it's essential to this whole process.
It's not just about addressing the psychological, emotional stuff,
Right.
but also taking care of the basics. Sleep,
Yeah.
eating well, moving your body, doing things that bring you joy.
It's all connected, right? It's
Yeah.
about treating yourself with kindness, compassion, recognizing that you are worthy of being well. You deserve to thrive.
We've been talking about breaking the cycle. And I'm wondering if even that language is a little harsh,
Mm.
like we're trying to shatter something.
Right.
Maybe it's more about rewriting the story, like we talked about before, or composing a new melody.
I love that. It's about creating something new and beautiful out of those fragments of the past. It's acknowledging that pain, but not letting it define us. And then choosing to move forward with intention, with hope, with the knowledge that you have the power to create a different future, not just for yourself, but for generations to come.
It's a powerful legacy to leave behind. So for anyone listening who's resonating with this, please know that you're not alone. There is no shame in having been hurt, and there's no shame in seeking help. You are worthy of love. You are worthy of healing. And you are worthy of a life free from pain.
Beautifully said. And remember, this deep dive, this is just the beginning. It's about sparking that awareness, that curiosity, that desire to learn more and to do better. And there are so many resources out there. There are so many people who care. And there is so much hope for a brighter future.